outrage, Tinkler. You have not one shred of proof. I'm going to sue you for false arrest, I swear it.
Before its 1977 premiere, this groundbreaking sitcom sparked unprecedented controversy, receiving 32,000 protest letters with only 9 supporting it, forcing ABC to slash ad prices in half, and making 18 affiliates refuse to air it. Yet the scandal only fueled its success, launching Billy Crystal's career, creating television's longest-serving butler character, and ending with one of TV's most infamous unresolved cliffhangers. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Soap Fact 1. Soap was never meant to be the title. When the producers of Soap sat down to create what would become one of television's most controversial sitcoms, they needed something to call their project during the development phase. They settled on Soap as a temporary placeholder, a simple reference to the soap operas they were planning to parody. It was just meant to get them through pre-production while they brainstormed something more creative and memorable. Week after week, the team threw around ideas, trying to come up with a title that would better capture the show's satirical edge and absurdist humor. They wanted something that would stand out, something that would make people curious enough to tune in. But as the weeks turned into months and production deadlines loomed closer, nothing seemed quite right. Every suggestion either felt too obvious, too obscure, or just didn't capture the right tone for what they were creating. Eventually, time ran out. The show needed to be promoted, advertised, and scheduled into ABC's fall lineup. The network couldn't wait any longer for the perfect title that might never come, so the working title became the official title by default. Soap stuck, not because it was brilliant or because anyone fell in love with it, but simply because they never found anything better. In retrospect, the simplicity of the name actually worked in the show's favor. It was easy to remember, instantly communicated what the show was about, and didn't try too hard to be clever. Sometimes the most straightforward choice ends up being the right one, even if it happens entirely by accident. Fact 2. The sound man kept miking the dummy. During the early days of filming Soap, the production crew encountered an unusual technical problem that nobody had anticipated. The show featured a character named Chuck Campbell, a ventriloquist played by Jay Johnson, who performed alongside his dummy partner Bob. The dummy had its own distinct personality and served as Chuck's alter ego, saying all the rude and offensive things that Chuck himself was too polite to express. Johnson's performance was so technically skilled and psychologically convincing that he created a genuine illusion of 2 separate personalities existing in the same scene. The problem arose when the sound engineers tried to record the dialogue during filming. Whenever Bob the dummy had lines to deliver, the sound technician would instinctively point the boom microphone toward the dummy's wooden head instead of toward Johnson's mouth where the voice was actually coming from. This happened repeatedly throughout the early production days. The sound man knew intellectually that the voice was coming from the ventriloquist, but Johnson's performance was so seamless and his technique so flawless that the illusion overrode common sense. Every time Bob spoke, the microphone would drift toward the dummy as if it were a real person talking. The crew eventually had to develop a system to remind the sound operators to keep the microphone focused on Johnson at all times, regardless of which character appeared to be speaking. This behind-the-scenes challenge became a testament to Johnson's remarkable skill as a performer and demonstrated just how effectively he could create the illusion of Bob being a separate, living entity rather than an inanimate object. Fact 3. Fake gay rights group pulled off. Inspired bluff. Among the many organizations that protested Soap before it aired was a group called the International Union of Gay Athletes, which claimed to represent gay athletic associations around the world. The organization expressed serious concerns about how the show would portray Jody Dallas, Billy Crystal's character, who was one of the first openly gay characters on primetime television. The IUGA worried that the storylines would reinforce harmful stereotypes, particularly Jody's planned sex change operation and his relationship with a professional football player. ABC took these concerns seriously and even held meetings with representatives from various LGBTQ advocacy groups, including the National Gay Task Force, to discuss the show's content and address their worries about stereotypical portrayals. The network wanted to be sensitive to the concerns of the gay community while still telling the stories they had planned. However, months after the show premiered, an investigation revealed something shocking about the International Union of Gay Athletes. The organization wasn't actually a legitimate worldwide coalition of athletic associations at all. Instead, it was essentially a front group consisting of only 4 people operating with a leader who didn't actually exist. TV Guide later characterized this elaborate deception as an inspired bluff. Despite being completely fabricated, the organization had successfully inserted itself into the national conversation about soap and influenced discussions about gay representation on television. The revelation didn't diminish the legitimate concerns that actual LGBTQ advocacy groups had raised about the show's portrayal of gay characters. But it did expose how easily a small group of determined individuals could create the appearance of a major institutional voice in the media landscape of 1977. Fact 4. 32,000 protest letters before anyone saw it. In the months leading up to Soap's premiere in September 1977, ABC found itself drowning in protest mail. The network received 32,000 letters from outraged viewers demanding that the show be taken off the air before it even broadcast a single episode. Remarkably, only 9 letters expressed support for the program. What made this massive wave of opposition even more extraordinary was that none of these protesters had actually seen the show they were condemning. The controversy stemmed from a June 1977 Newsweek article written by Harry Waters, who reviewed ABC's upcoming fall season. Waters had attended a screening of the first 2 episodes, but his preview contained numerous factual errors and greatly exaggerated the show's sexual content. Most notably, he incorrectly claimed that the show included a scene of a Catholic priest being seduced in a confessional booth, which never actually appeared in any episode. He also characterized the program as a sex farce, saturated with inappropriate content. Within days of the article's publication, national and local religious organizations mobilized against soap. The National Council of Churches, the United Church of Christ, the United Methodist Church, the National Council of Catholic Bishops, and the Christian Life Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention all condemned the show. The Roman Catholic Church, led by its Los Angeles Archdiocese, went further, calling for all American families to boycott the program and stating that ABC should be told that Americans wouldn't tolerate what they perceived as attacks on Catholicism and morality. One ABC vice president was shocked to discover that his 11-year-old child had been required by a parochial school teacher to write a protest letter to the network asking them to cancel the show. Fact 5. ABC slashed commercial prices by nearly half. The massive pre-broadcast controversy surrounding soap had real financial consequences for ABC and the show's viability. As religious organizations organized boycotts and protest campaigns intensified throughout the summer of 1977, major advertisers began to panic about being associated with such a controversial program. Several companies that had initially agreed to sponsor the show started canceling their commitments, worried that their brands would be tarnished by connection to what protesters were calling an immoral and offensive program. The advertiser exodus created a serious problem for ABC. Television networks rely on commercial revenue to fund their programming, and a show without sufficient advertising support simply cannot survive on air. The network found itself in a difficult position as the premiere date approached. They believed in the show and felt that much of the criticism was based on misinformation and exaggeration, but they also couldn't afford to broadcast a program that didn't have enough sponsors to cover its costs. ABC made a dramatic decision to salvage the situation. They slashed the price for commercial time. Slots during soap from $75,000 per 30-second spot down to just $40,000 per spot. This represented a reduction of nearly half the original price, a massive discount that demonstrated just how desperate the network was to secure full sponsorship for the premiere. The strategy worked well enough to keep the show on the air, though at significant financial cost to ABC. This pricing decision showed that the network was willing to take a substantial financial hit to defend the show and see it through to broadcast, even in the face of unprecedented organized opposition. Fact 6. Casey Kasem quit. After the pilot episode, before soap became known for Rod Roddy's distinctive opening and closing narration, ABC had hired a different announcer for the role. Casey Kasem, already famous as the host of American Top 40 and one of the most recognizable voices in American radio, was brought in to provide the show's voiceover work. Kasem recorded the narration for the pilot episode, delivering the lines that would introduce the Campbell and Tate families to television audiences and set up the show's soap opera parody format. His smooth professional delivery seemed like a perfect fit for the satirical tone the producers wanted to achieve. However, once Kasem saw the completed pilot episode and fully understood the show's controversial content and adult themes, he made an immediate decision. Despite the prestige of the project and what would have been steady work on a network sitcom, Kasem quit after recording only that single pilot episode. The show's frank treatment of sexuality, adultery, homosexuality, and other taboo subjects made Kasem uncomfortable enough that he chose to walk away from the job entirely. This wasn't an easy decision, as Kasem was turning down guaranteed television work, but he felt strongly that the content conflicted with his personal values. ABC and the producers needed to find a replacement quickly, and they turned to Rod Roddy, a radio personality and announcer who had no reservations about the show's boundary-pushing content. Roddy took over the announcer role for the entire series run from 1977 to 1981, becoming an integral part of the show's identity with his deadpan delivery of increasingly absurd plot summaries and his signature closing line, asking viewers to tune in next week. Fact 7. Chuck and Bob were supposed to be murderers. When creator Susan Harris first conceived the character of Chuck Campbell and his ventriloquist dummy Bob, she had a very different trajectory planned for them than what eventually appeared on screen. In the original storyline, Chuck and Bob were designed to be short-term guest characters who would appear for just a few episodes during the show's first season. The plan called for them to be involved in a murder mystery, with the ventriloquist and his dummy actually committing the crime that would drive the early plot. The storyline would have culminated in a courtroom scene where Bob, the dummy, would testify against Chuck, his human partner, creating a surreal and darkly comic moment that would have pushed the show's absurdist humor to new extremes. After their legal storyline concluded, Chuck and Bob were supposed to disappear from the show entirely, moving on while the Campbell and Tate families dealt with the aftermath of the crime. However, something unexpected happened when the early episodes began airing. The audience response to Chuck and Bob was overwhelmingly positive. Viewers were captivated by Jay Johnson's skillful ventriloquism and the sharp, insulting comedy that came from Bob's wooden mouth. The dynamic between the mild-mannered Chuck and his aggressive, politically incorrect dummy struck a chord with audiences who found the concept both hilarious and psychologically fascinating. The producers quickly realized they had something special that they couldn't afford to lose. They made the decision to completely revise their plans for the murder mystery storyline, changing the identity of the killer to preserve Chuck and Bob as characters. Instead of being written out after a handful of episodes, Chuck and Bob remained with the series for its entire 4-season run, becoming fan favorites and one of the show's most memorable elements. Fact 8. Katherine Helmond never won despite 4 nominations. Katherine Helmond's performance as Jessica Tate, the ditzy but lovable matriarch of the wealthy Tate family, was universally praised by critics and audiences alike. She brought a childlike innocence and warmth to a character who could have easily been played as simply stupid or annoying. Helmond found the perfect balance, making Jessica someone who floated through life as if music were always playing, interpreting even the most outrageous situations with naive optimism and genuine sweetness. Her portrayal was so beloved and critically acclaimed that the Television Academy nominated her for an Emmy Award in the Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series category every single season that Soap was on the air. She received nominations in 1978, 1979, 1980, and 1981, an impressive achievement that demonstrated consistent recognition of her work throughout the show's entire run. Yet despite 4 consecutive nominations and widespread acknowledgement that her performance was groundbreaking, Helmond never won the Emmy for Soap. Year after year, she lost to other actresses, even as her character remained one of the most memorable and well-loved on television. The pattern became almost inexplicable to fans and industry observers who considered her work to be among the finest comedic performances of the era. Helmond did win 2 Golden Globe Awards for her role as Jessica Tate, providing some recognition for her exceptional work, but the Emmy eluded her throughout Soap's run. She would later receive Emmy nominations for her roles in Who's the Boss and Everybody Loves Raymond, but again, never won. Her 4 consecutive nominations for Soap remain a testament to the quality of her performance and a curious footnote in Emmy history as one of the category's most notable oversights. Fact 9. British comedian named herself. After Jessica Tate. Years after Soap ended its run on American television, the show had an unexpected influence on a young British woman who was beginning her career in entertainment. Catherine Ford was born in December 1969 in London, England, and grew up watching television shows from both sides of the Atlantic. When she decided to pursue a career in acting and comedy, she faced a practical challenge that many performers encounter. She needed to get an equity card, the professional union membership required to work as an actress in the United Kingdom. Part of obtaining this card involved choosing a professional stage name if your birth name was already taken or if you wanted something more memorable. Catherine Ford decided she wanted a different surname for her professional identity. Rather than choosing something random or simply modifying her own name, she turned to a character who had made an impression on her from American television. She had watched Soap during its broadcasts and later in syndication, and Katherine Helmond's portrayal of Jessica Tate had clearly resonated with her. The character's combination of sweetness, absurdity, and unexpected depth represented qualities that Ford admired and wanted to channel in her own comedic work. So when she filled out her equity card application, Catherine Ford became Catherine Tate, adopting the surname of Jessica's family. This choice proved fortuitous for her career. Catherine Tate went on to become one of Britain's most successful comedians and actresses, starring in The Catherine Tate Show, playing Donna Noble in Doctor Who, and appearing in the American version of The Office. The stage name that connected her to a 1970s American sitcom became recognizable to millions of viewers worldwide, carrying forward a small piece of Soap's legacy in an entirely unexpected way. Fact 10. The series ended with 5 simultaneous cliffhangers. When the cast and crew of Soap filmed the final episode of Season 4, they had every expectation that they would be returning for a 5th season. Creator Susan Harris had always planned for the show to run 5 years, and she had already mapped out where the stories would go. The network hadn't officially announced a renewal yet, but there was no indication that cancellation was imminent. So the writers crafted an ending that would leave viewers desperate to know what happened next, with multiple storylines reaching critical cliffhanger moments simultaneously. Jessica Tate had been kidnapped by South American revolutionaries and was standing before a firing squad in the fictional country of Malaguay, trying unsuccessfully to convince her captors not to execute her. The final moments showed her facing the guns, and viewers heard the shots fired without knowing if she survived. Meanwhile, Burt Campbell was walking into an ambush orchestrated by political enemies, with his fate completely uncertain. Chester Tate had discovered that his wife Annie was having an affair with Danny, who was actually Chester's biological son from a secret relationship years earlier, and Chester was preparing to shoot them both in a jealous rage. Jody Dallas had undergone hypnotherapy that went wrong, leaving him believing he was Julius, a 90-year-old Jewish man from a past life, with no indication of when or if he would return to his normal identity. Chester was also scheduled to duel with El Puerco over Jessica. Then ABC made an unexpected decision. The network canceled Soap after season 4, and suddenly none of these dramatic questions would ever be answered. The show ended on April 20th, 1981, leaving viewers frustrated and confused about the fate of every major character. Fact 11. Jessica's fate was partially resolved on Benson. After Soap ended with Jessica Tate apparently being executed by a South American firing squad, fans were left wondering what happened to Katherine Hellman's beloved character. The show's unexpected cancellation meant that none of the cliffhangers would be resolved in a proper series finale. For 2 years, Jessica's fate remained a complete mystery. Then, in 1983, something unusual happened on Benson, the successful spin-off series that followed the adventures of the Tate family's former butler. Robert Guillaume's character, Benson Du Bois, had left the Tate household at the end of Soap's second season to work for the governor, and his show had been running successfully for several years. In one memorable episode, Benson encountered something he didn't expect. The ghost of Jessica Tate appeared to him. Katherine Hellman returned to reprise her iconic role, appearing as an apparition that only Benson could see and hear. During their conversation, Jessica revealed crucial information about her fate. She wasn't actually dead as the firing squad scene had implied. Instead, she was lying in a coma somewhere in South America, her body still alive, even though her spirit was apparently able to visit her old friend. This revelation provided at least some closure to fans who had spent 2 years wondering if Jessica had survived the execution. The touching scene between Benson and Jessica's ghost gave viewers a chance to see these two characters interact one more time and confirm that Jessica's story hadn't ended with those gunshots. However, this was the only cliffhanger from Soap's finale that received any resolution. The fates of Burt, Chester, Danny, Annie, and Jody remained forever unknown, left hanging in that final episode. Fact 12. Susan Harris planned 5 seasons in advance. Before Soap ever premiered on ABC, creator Susan Harris approached the show with an unusual level of detailed planning that was rare for sitcoms of that era. Most comedy shows developed their storylines as they went along, with writers mapping out a few episodes ahead at most, and adjusting based on what was working with audiences. Harris took a completely different approach. She created what's known in television production as a show Bible, an extensive planning document that outlined the entire trajectory of the series from beginning to end. This Bible contained detailed character profiles, relationship maps, major plot developments, and story arcs that would unfold over multiple seasons. Harris didn't just plan 1 or 2 seasons ahead. She mapped out 5 complete seasons of Soap before the first episode was ever filmed. She knew which characters would have affairs, who would get married or divorced, which major events would shake up the families, and how various mysteries would be revealed and resolved over the course of years. This level of advanced planning gave the show a narrative coherence and long-term storytelling structure that was sophisticated for a sitcom at the time. The detailed Bible also served another purpose during the show's controversial pre-production period. ABC's Standards and Practices Department, the network censors who reviewed content for acceptability, were able to read through Harris's complete plan for all 5 seasons. This allowed them to see the full context of controversial storylines and understand how various plot threads would develop and resolve over time. Unfortunately, all of Harris's careful planning for 5 seasons became irrelevant when ABC unexpectedly canceled the show after season 4. Years of mapped-out storylines and character development that Harris had envisioned would never make it to the screen. Fact 13-18. Affiliates refused to air the premiere. When Soap was scheduled to premiere on Tuesday, September 13, 1977, at 9:30 in the evening, ABC expected that the show would reach viewers across the entire country through its network of 195 affiliate stations. However, the months of controversy and protest campaigns had a tangible impact on the show's broadcast. 18 ABC affiliates out of those 195 refused outright to air the premiere episode, deciding that the show's content was too controversial for their local markets. These stations chose to completely remove Soap from their schedules rather than face potential backlash from their communities. Other affiliates took a different approach, agreeing to broadcast the show but moving it to a late-night time slot after 11 o'clock at night. These stations believed the content might be acceptable for adult viewers watching late at night, but was inappropriate for the 9:30 time slot when families and younger viewers might be watching. By the time Soap aired its second episode 1 week later, the situation had actually gotten worse too. More affiliates dropped the show entirely, bringing the total number of stations boycotting Soap to 20. This meant that roughly 10% of ABC's affiliate stations were refusing to carry one of the network's new fall programs, an extraordinary situation that demonstrated just how deep the controversy ran. The geographic coverage gaps created by these affiliate boycotts meant that significant portions of the American viewing audience couldn't watch Soap even if they wanted to. Viewers in those markets who were curious about the show that had generated so much national debate had no legal way to see it unless they traveled to a different city or had powerful enough antennas to pick up signals from distant stations. Fact 14. The leaked Soap memo became industry legend. During Soap's development, ABC's Broadcast Standards and Practices Department, commonly known as the network censors, reviewed Susan Harris's extensive show Bible and the scripts for the 2-part pilot episode. Their job was to identify content that might violate broadcast standards or create problems with advertisers and regulators. After their review, the Standards and Practices executives issued a lengthy memo to Harris outlining their concerns and requested changes. The document addressed not just the sexual content that had been widely reported in the press, but also raised issues about the show's religious, political, and ethnic content. The memo discussed concerns about everything from specific plot points to character behaviors to dialogue that might offend various audience segments. This type of internal document was normally kept strictly confidential within the network. However, before Soap premiered, someone leaked the entire memo to the press. On June 27, 1977, the Los Angeles Times published the complete text of what became known as the Soap Memo. The public release of this internal censorship document was extremely unusual for the television industry. It provided a rare behind-the-scenes look at how networks monitored and controlled content, revealing the detailed negotiations that happened between creative teams and network executives. The memo's publication added fuel to the existing controversy by giving protesters specific details about content that concerned even the network's own censors, but it also had an unexpected effect within the television industry itself. Copies of the document began appearing on bulletin boards in television production offices and studio sets throughout Hollywood. For many people working in television, the memo became a rallying point against censorship and network interference with creative vision. Fact 15. Controversy actually helped make it a hit. After months of protests, boycotts, affiliate rejections, and national media coverage of the controversy, Soap finally premiered on September 13, 1977. The question everyone in the television industry wanted answered was whether all the negative publicity would sink the show before it even had a chance to find an audience, or whether the controversy might actually work in the show's favor. The answer came quickly. The premiere episode didn't just survive, it dominated its time slot. Soap swept the competition with a 25.6 rating and captured 39% of the national television audience, meaning that nearly 4 out of every 10 people watching television at that time were tuned into Soap. These were remarkable numbers for a new show, especially one that had been so heavily criticized before anyone had seen it. The controversy had ironically served as the most effective promotional campaign ABC could have asked for. 6 months of protests and news coverage had made Soap one of the most talked about shows in America before it even aired. People who might never have heard of the show otherwise were now curious to see what all the fuss was about. The premiere also benefited from its strong lead-in programming. Soap aired right after Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Three's Company, all major hits that delivered large audiences. ABC received hundreds of phone calls after the premiere ended, and the network was prepared for an onslaught of complaints. Instead, executives described the initial public reaction as surprisingly mild, with more calls coming in to support the show than to protest against it. The controversy had helped create a hit.